Hi, it's me, Miss Mutu again, and I'm back for lesson 7. So in lesson 7, you'll be learning about a different kind of habitat. It's called a freshwater habitat. So hope you enjoy. I'm proud of all the work. Like seriously, you guys are killing it with this virtual learning. So keep up the good work. Here is a picture of a globe. The globe shows us both the land and water that make up our planet Earth. I want you to take your finger out and point to the water on Earth. What color is all the water on Earth? Yes, it's blue. Now I want you to take your finger and point to all the land on Earth. What color is the land on Earth? Yes, it's green. Good job. Let's move our attention to the habitat poster. Who can name all the habitats that we learned so far? Feel free to use your habitat journal to help you remember the names or special things about these habitats that we've learned. Go ahead, take a second to name all the habitats that we have learned so far. Good job. Now let's name them all. As we're naming them, I want you to take count. I want you to think about, is this habitat a land habitat or a water habitat? If it's a land habitat, I want you to keep a count or tallies of that. And if it's a water habitat, I want you to keep a tally of that as well. Okay, let's get ready to see what we find. Land habitats will be in green and water habitats will be in blue. This habitat is the Arctic tundra. And the Arctic tundra is a land habitat. So far, one land habitat. This habitat is the Arctic Ocean, and this is a water habitat. So far, one water habitat. This habitat is the desert. So far, two land habitats. This habitat is the savanna. So far, 3 land habitats. And if you notice, the savanna is highlighted in green. This habitat is the temperate deciduous forest. If you notice, this habitat is a land habitat and it's also highlighted in green. So far, 4 land habitats. This habitat is the tropical rainforest. So far, 5 land habitats. And if you notice, this one is also highlighted in green. Let's go back. How many land habitats did we learn about so far? I counted 5. Did you also get 5? Okay. How many water habitats did we learn about so far? I counted just 1. Did you get just 1 too? Now, what do we notice about the difference in the number of land habitats that we have and water habitats that we have? Which one has more? Which one has less? Yeah, we learned about more land habitats than water habitats. Now, which water habitat have we learned about so far? We've only learned about the Arctic Ocean. That's the only water habitat we've learned about so far. So today we're going to learn about another water habitat, a freshwater habitat. The freshwater is water that does not have very much salt in it. It's often water that people can drink. Freshwater habitats are different from the water habitats found in the Arctic Ocean, which is called a saltwater habitat. This image shows different kinds of freshwater habitats, such as rivers, streams, lakes, and ponds. Here's an image of all the continents. If you notice, they're all different colors that represent the different habitats. If we zoom in and look at all of the dark blue colorings, those are all areas in the world that have freshwater habitats. So take your fingers and bounce around and point to all of the dark blue habitats. Those are our freshwater habitats. As you can tell, they're not really that many. What are some fresh habitats in your area or examples that you've seen before? Go ahead, share with me. Any more examples? Okay, I'll share some freshwater habitats that are in my area. As you know, Miss Mutu lives in Brooklyn in Flatbush. One freshwater habitat in my area is a lake that you see here in Prospect Park. So Prospect Park is a cool little park. Actually, it's not little at all. It's a huge park in Brooklyn. And here's an example of a freshwater habitat that we have here. I have one more to show you. Here's an example of a pond in my area as well. This is also a pond in Prospect Park. A lot of people like to walk around in this area, take beautiful pictures with their family and friends. So those are the two freshwater habitats that I've noticed in my area. I'm sure there are many more, but those are the ones that like stick out and pop out to me. And I wanted to make sure I shared it with you guys. Now I'm going to jump into our story. And this story is going to be all about freshwater habitats. As I'm reading, listen carefully to find the different kinds of plants and animals that live in a freshwater habitat. Hello again. Glad you can join me. I thought we needed a real change, so I've come off dry land to a place where it's wet all the time. A lake. A lake is an area of water that is surrounded by land or has land all around it. There is a lot of water in the world. In fact, water covers most of Earth's surface, but only a tiny part of the world's water is freshwater, the kind of water you and I can drink because it has very little salt in it. Fresh water is found in streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds. The water in these streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds come from rain and from melting ice and snow. Isn't it amazing to think that the water from the drinking fountain at school or from the faucet in your house all comes from rain? I'm here at the water's edge, or where the water and land meet, to explore this lake and the plants and animals that call this freshwater habitat home. Freshwater habitats have many kinds of fish, birds, insects, and other animals. Standing here, I can see an enormous or very big leaf in the water. Let me climb onto it so I can get a closer look. This is a water lily leaf. Point to the water lily in the picture. A water lily is a plant that lives in water near the edges of ponds and lakes. Plants are important in freshwater habitats because they make oxygen for animals to breathe. Plants are also food for the animals to eat, and they provide shelter to protect animals from their predators. Remember, a predator is an animal that hunts other animals. The leaves of the water lily are very large, round, and green, and they float on the surface of the water. If the leaves float on the surface of the water, that means they stay on top of the water and they don't sink. The water lily is well adapted for living in this habitat. Like the kapok tree in the rainforest, the lily's large leaves let it get as much sunlight as it needs for food and energy. Lilies are also food for many animals. Believe it or not, animals like deer, porcupines, beavers, and turtles all eat the leaves, whereas ducks and geese like to eat the roots. Some animals, like fish and frogs, use the lily's leaves as hiding places, and the flowers bring bees and other insects. I'm going to float around the edge of the lake of this water lily leaf, but I'm going to have to leave soon because this pesky turtle will not leave me on the leaf alone. Off from the edge of the lake a little, and I already can see another kind of plant that lives here. It's called a cattail, and it gets its name from the unusual way it looks. Thankfully for me, it doesn't have much to do with real cats. Cattails have long, thin stems with foot-long furry flower spikes at the top that turn from green in the early summer to brown in the fall. The flower spike feels soft and furry and looks a little like a cat's tail, but I think it looks more like a hot dog. Does it look like a cattail to you? The plants can reach up to 9 feet in height, which lets them get as much sunlight as they need. As with water lilies, some animals use cattails for food and shelter. Point to each animal you see. As I talk about them, I want you to point and bounce from animal to animal. All right, number 1. Muskrats and geese like to eat the roots of the cattail. Green shoots are a favorite of moose and elk. Moose and elk, like caribou, are part of the deer family. Many kinds of birds make their homes among the cattails. It's very hard to see anything in there because cattails grow so thick. So it's a good place for birds to build their nests and to lay and hatch their eggs. Predators like snakes and frogs also live among the cattails and search for animals like birds and insects for food. I think I'm going to move now. As you know, I'm not really good with snakes. Come with me beneath the water and let's take a look at what's under there. Here are some nice looking rainbow trout. Fish can only live in water and they breathe underwater because gills on the sides of their bodies. Gills take in oxygen from the water around them. Fish have strong tails that they use for swimming and fins that they use for steering and balance. The rainbow trout is a carnivore. Remember, a carnivore is an animal that eats other animals. It eats other water animals like insects, other fish, and sometimes shellfish. It even eats some small land animals like mice if it gets a chance, so I'm sure it wouldn't mind to nibble on a rat. Rainbow trout like to live in rivers, but some prefer the deep water of big lakes. What do you see in this image? Yes, it's a frog. I enjoyed exploring beneath the surface of the water, and now I'm going to rest on a lily pad again. While I'm drying off a bit, let me show you a kind of frog called a bullfrog that I can see sitting at the water's edge. Frogs are amphibious, which means they live both in water and on land. Bullfrogs are the largest kind of frogs found in North America, and they can grow more than 1/2 foot long and wide more than a pound. That's a really big frog. The bullfrog gets its name from the loud cow-like noise it makes. A male cow is called a bull. What sound does a cow make? I bet birds and turtles would be pretty surprised to know that a frog can make such a loud sound. Pretty neat, huh? This bullfrog is resting now, but it will come out to hunt when it gets dark. Bullfrogs eat a lot of different kinds of foods. They are carnivores, so they eat small fish, snakes, birds, and insects like this dragonfly that's buzzing around my head. This is an adult dragonfly. Adult means grown up. Adult dragonflies are flying insects with long bodies and wings. Dragonflies live around lakes, streams, and other freshwater habitats because they lay their eggs in water. Adult dragonflies eat other insects like mosquitoes, flies, and bees. The dragonfly uses its long wings to hover around in the air or stay in one place while flying, where it catches its food. It has to be careful because the bullfrog isn't the only one that likes to eat dragonflies. Birds and turtles like to eat them too. The water is getting a little rough out here. Ah, that's why. Here come some birds that like to eat insects. These are kinds of ducks called mallards. Ducks are birds and can live both in and out of water, but it's the water where they spend most of their time. Like all birds, ducks, like mallards, are covered in feathers. Did you know that ducks' feathers are waterproof? If something is waterproof, that means it keeps water out. Ducks rub special oil from their tails all over their feathers because oil and water don't mix. Water drips right off the ducks without getting their feathers wet. Ducks float on the surface of water and have large, webbed feet to help them paddle. They dip their heads under the water and use their beaks, which are called bills, to search for food at the bottom of the lake. Here, the word bills refers to ducks' beaks. Mallards eat grass and seeds from plants, and small animals like insects, worms, snails, frogs, and small fish. Well, we've had a good look around the freshwater habitat, but I have to get off this leaf because these ducks are knocking me off. There's another kind of water habitat, and we're going to have to look at it next time. I hope you'll join me. Now, if you will excuse me, I have to start my long trip back to the shore. Goodbye. Until next time. Hope you enjoyed the story. Now we're going to move on to the comprehension conversation part of the read aloud. I will ask you a question once, then twice, give you an opportunity to answer the question when I pause. Then we're going to go back into the text to find more specific details for our answers. Get ready. Question number 1. Is most of Earth's water fresh water or salt water? Again, is most of Earth's water fresh water or salt water? Let's go back into the text to see if we can get more details on this. There is a lot of water in the world. In fact, water covers most of the Earth's surface, but only a tiny part of the world's water is fresh water, the kind of water you and I can drink because it is very little in salt. So most of the Earth's water is salt water. Question. Describe a freshwater habitat. Make sure that you cite specifics from the read aloud to support your answer, meaning you can always pause this video and go back into the text. Go ahead. Okay, let's go back to see if we can get specific evidence for our answer. Good job. Now let's see what else we can add to your answer. This question is asking us to provide a summary of what we read. So the answers might be different, but your answers could include things like there are many kinds of fish, birds, insects, and other animals. There are plants that make oxygen for animals to breathe and that serve as food and shelter for animals. So this question about this freshwater habitat, you can answer by just adding any detail you want about something you learned. One more question though. What are some examples of freshwater habitats? According to the text, some examples are fresh water is found in streams, rivers, lakes, and ponds. My next question is all about plants. What are some plants that live in freshwater habitats? Remember, you can always go back into the text to add more evidence or to help you get an idea. A water lily is a plant that lives in water near the edge of ponds and lakes. Plants are important in freshwater habitats because they make oxygen for animals to breathe. Plants are also food for animals to eat and they can provide shelter. There's one more plant in this habitat and that plant is called cattail. So let's see what we know about them. Cattails have long, thin stems with foot-long, furry flower spikes at the top that turn from green in the early summer to brown in the fall. The flower spikes feel soft and furry and looks like a cat's tail. The plant can reach up to 9 feet in height, which lets them get as much sunlight as they need. As with water lilies, some animals use cattails for food and shelter. This question is all about animals. What animals live in freshwater habitats? You can go back, give me a list, and then I'll just give you a list of the animals that I notice and see. Any more animals you notice? Do you think you have them all? Okay, here's my list. Here we go. Some animals include fish, including rainbow trout, birds, including ducks, insects, dragonflies, bees, mosquitoes, bullfrogs, deer, porcupine, beavers, turtle, muskrats, and geese. Here's a question about another animal, more specifically an insect. How are dragonflies adapted to living in freshwater habitats? Think about the things that they have done or things that they have that help them survive. Now let's go back into the text to get more specific information on dragonflies. Dragonflies use their long wings to hover around in the air or stay flying in one place where it catches its food. It has to be careful because the bullfrog isn't the only one that likes to eat dragonflies. Dragonflies live around lakes, streams, and other freshwater habitats. Adult dragonflies eat other insects like mosquitoes, flies, and bees. Adult dragonflies are flying insects with long bodies and wings. Dragonflies live around lakes, streams, and other freshwater habitats because they lay their eggs in water. Adult dragonflies eat other insects like mosquitoes, flies, and bees. Dragonflies use their long wings to hover around in the air or stay in one place while flying. I want you to think about this question, pair, and share with somebody around you. Why are water lilies so important in freshwater habitats? Again, why are water lilies so important in freshwater habitats? Go ahead. Remember, you can always go back in the text to get your answer. Thanks for sharing. It's always cool to hear what you guys come up with and how you guys are really, really learning so much about habitats. Let's go back into the text to see why water lilies are so important in this fresh water habitat. A water lily is a plant that lives in water near the edges of ponds and lakes. Plants are important in freshwater habitats because they make oxygen for animals to breathe. Plants are also food for animals to eat, and they provide shelter to protect from predators. The leaves of a water lily are very large, round, and green, and they float to the surface of the water. Now that we're done with our questions, we are going to learn about or explore a new vocabulary word, and it also happens to be about water lilies. Go ahead. In the read aloud, you heard the leaves of the water lily are very large, round, and green, and they float on the surface of the water. Say the word float with me. Float. One more time. Float. If things float on water, that means they stay on top of water. They do not sink. In the summer, I like to float in the pool. What other things float in water? Try to use the word float when you tell me about it. So, my bath toys float in the tub. My dog floats in the water. My duck floats in the pond. These are examples of using the word float. What word have we been talking about again? Yes, the word is float. Now let's play a little game and do an activity. I'm going to describe a situation. If it's an example of something that floats, say, that floats. If it's an example of something that does not float, say, that does not float. Get ready. The leaf fell from the tree and landed on the surface of the water. That floats. Harry threw the rock and it sank to the bottom of the pond. That does not float. The boat rocked gently back and forth on top of the waves. That floats. The dolphin dove deep into the ocean. That does not float. There are many pennies under the water at the bottom of the water fountain. That does not float. Good job. Now let's move on to our other portion. Have you ever heard the saying, a fish out of water? Repeat after me, a fish out of water. What would happen to a fish if it was out of water? What else might happen? Why might that happen to the fish? The fish would not be able to survive outside of its usual environment. It would be very uncomfortable, and it would be difficult for the fish to survive very long out of water. Fish can only breathe out of the water using their gills, so being out of water will be bad. I mean, really bad for a fish. The saying, a fish out of water, is used to talk about people who aren't in their usual place or who are uncomfortable in a situation or environment. People would survive if they weren't in their usual place or familiar circumstances, but they might feel weird or strange. Think about being in a different classroom that you don't belong in, or think about being switched to a new family or new friends. That would be very, very uncomfortable. With someone at home, I want you to talk about how you will feel in these situations. Situation 1. You are the only person who forgot to wear shoes to school. How would you feel? I would feel extremely uncomfortable. I will actually feel really weird to be the only person in school without shoes. Situation number 2. You started attending a new school and you didn't know anyone else in your class. How would you feel? Well, I had to start a new school this year and I had to meet new teachers. And at first, I felt really uncomfortable. You might feel like a fish out of water in these situations because you aren't experiencing things that you're used to. Give examples of when you might feel uncomfortable in a new or different environment, meaning when might you feel like a fish out of water? Share with someone in your home. After you're done sharing, come back. Good job. Now we're going to move on to the activity part of this read aloud. Before we jump into the activity portion of our journal, let's review what we learned about freshwater habitats. Climate varies, meaning that it's different all over the world, so it can experience all 4 seasons. Water. In this habitat, the water comes from rain, melting snow, and ice. Ground. Land by the water's edge, otherwise covered with water. Plants. Water lilies and cattails. Animals include turtles, beavers, rainbow trout, and other fish, bullfrogs and other frogs, ducks, geese, and snakes. Adaptation. Water lilies have large leaves that float on the water surface and take in a lot of sunlight. Fish have gills for breathing underwater. Frogs are amphibious. Dragonflies have long wings for hovering to catch food. Ducks have waterproof feathers and large webbed feet for padding. Now we're going to use this information from our chart and we're going to turn to our knowledge journals. Here's my updated journal. I really tried to draw the pictures. I really did. Smooth's not a really great artist, but I tried my best. While you are working on your knowledge journal, I wanted to share what I wrote on mine, and this is what I have so far. Here's my picture, and here is what I wrote about this freshwater habitat. Today I learned a lot about the freshwater habitat. I learned that the water here comes from rain and melting snow and ice. The water is safe to drink. I learned about water lilies, and they help give oxygen for animals to breathe and food for them to eat. Now you know everything you need to know about freshwater habitats. Looking forward to seeing your journals. Please upload to your student portfolio. Again, if you need any help, you can visit me or any of your teachers during office hours to get some help. Looking forward to seeing all the amazing writing and artwork.